The Capitals fall in the second game of the playoffs to the New York Rangers, but the Capitals did show signs of improvement. What needs to change before they take on the Rangers on Friday night? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals and how they came up short yet again. I think that there were signs of improvement. You did see some improvement, at least in the beginning of the game, that I thought maybe there was a chance that they could do something crazy and win this game. But ultimately, miscues and penalties were what the Achilles heel of this team was. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We will talk about how the Capitals are struggling in this playoff series. It's only game number 2, but they are struggling. But Tom Wilson is leading the charge and trying to drag this team across the finish line. And then we will talk about the controversial hit of Artemi Panarin on TJ Oshie. But just to get it going here, like I talked about, I thought when the game started, I would say about the first 10 minutes, pretty promising. I thought that the Capitals were controlling the pace. They were actually getting zone entries, and I thought we're off to a good start. But then the wheel wobbled and fell off when the Capitals, things came to haunt them that haunted them during the regular season. Costly penalties, miscues, not a lot of tape-to-tape passes. And that was ultimately the demise of the Capitals tonight. Steps of improvement, but still much needs to be improved before they take on the Rangers again on Friday evening. The Capitals played really strong in the first 10 minutes of the first period. They were controlling the pace, and I thought there might be a chance they could win this one, but poor play and costly penalties proved to be costly for the Capitals as they fall by a score of 4-3. They did what they could do, but ultimately it wasn't enough. The Caps were looking to get on the board and maybe control the momentum of the game. Connor McMichael ultimately was the one that got on the board first for the Capitals in a huge moment. We do know that oftentimes that the Capitals struggle when they don't get offense early. So for Connor McMichael to find the back of the net early and help kind of tilt the ice in the Capitals' direction definitely helped the Capitals, at least in the beginning of the game. But the Rangers stole back the momentum with a deflected goal that evened up the score. So it was ping-ponging back and forth. It seems like in this series that the Capitals will do something great. They'll score a goal, and then the New York Rangers are quickly to come up behind them and slam the door in their face and say, not so fast, not in our barn. The Capitals lacked structure and discipline that ultimately led to the Rangers dictating the outcome of the game. Now, when I was talking about that positive zone entries and that kind of thing, that was pretty much just in the first 10 minutes of the game. After that, it was kind of a mess. We did see the Capitals play better in the second, and they tried to turn it on in the third period, but it's the patches of inconsistency that really were difficult for the Capitals, and untimely penalties. The John Carlson one that led directly to a goal, those are the things that can negatively impact the outcome of the game. If you are an everydayer of the show, I talked about that for the Capitals to be successful in game number 2, they need to bring their physical game and they need to get in the Rangers' head. Well, it seems like the reverse happened and the Rangers got into the Capitals' head and it caused the Capitals to go on the PK that led to more opportunities for the Rangers. So that's one of the things that I think the Capitals need to improve on before game number 2. And one of the things that was really lacking in the game tonight, Mika Zibanejad and Jack Roslovic found a way to beat Charlie Lindgren to make it 3-2. That's the back and forth. Zibanejad, he is a guy that has been a pest for the Capitals for years. He is a guy that knows how to score goals on the regular. And one of the key pieces that has been clutch for, the last half of the season or after the All-Star break has been Alex Ovechkin. But he seems off. He seems out of sorts, and that was especially evident tonight, where he just did not seem dialed in, like he was not playing his best hockey. I don't know if he wasn't feeling well or if just the New York Rangers are too much for him to handle. One of the things that I watched in an interview with TJ Oshie is he said that, some of the young guys on the team, you think the best years of your life are ahead of you. But when you get to our age, he was talking about Oshie and Alex Ovechkin, that it's that much more difficult to keep up with a lot of the younger talent. And that was evident tonight out on the ice, that it was difficult for the Capitals to keep pace with the New York Rangers. And, it's one of the teams that when you get the puck, you don't have a lot of time to think about what you're going to do. You have the puck and what's move number 2. You don't even have a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It's like, I have the puck, it's going to you, or I'm firing it on the net, because that is where the Capitals have been exposed. They held on to it for a second or two too long, and it was stripped away. Or it was shot, and it was shot to a Rangers player. The Rangers are a quick team. And it's a veteran-laden team as well. It's not like it's the Buffalo Sabres and it's all young guys. They've got to find a way to overcome. Alex Ovechkin has got to find a way to find his game. Spencer Carbery talked about Ovi as well. He said the first 2 games, he looks a little bit off. He's struggling. And that was one of the comments that they made in the game on the ESPN feed, is they were talking about that he looked upset that he was getting pulled off the ice at certain points of the game. And I think ultimately Spencer Carbery is like, hey, I know you're the captain of the team, but I want to win us a game here, and I'm going to put whoever is out on the ice to get that done. Keandre Miller drove the puck home and made it a 4-2 game. That's what I'm talking about. It's not just all upper echelon players. I guess Keandre Miller is one of the better players for that team as well, but it's not one of the marquee names. It's not Panarin and Zibanejad. They have scoring up and down their lineup. That is what makes them a really, really great hockey team, and subsequently why they won the President's Trophy and are in the position that they're in. But the Capitals did have some pushback in this game. It wasn't like game number 1 where it was like the Rangers had their way with the Capitals. Dylan Strome scores his first goal of the playoffs and his 3rd career postseason goal to tie it up 2-2. And that was big for the Capitals. Strome ranked 2nd on the Capitals with a career-high 27 goals during the regular season. We know he has been clutch for this team all season long, and he showed up big. It's just the thing that's coming into focus for the Capitals is that they are a good team, but they're not good enough to compete with the likes of the Rangers. I'm not saying that they're out of it, but what I am going to say is it will be an extremely uphill climb for the Capitals to win games and a true Hail Mary pass for them to win this series. Very improbable, but what do we know about this team that has been said about this team all year is that they can't compete. They're not one of the best. There's no chance they're going to make it to the playoffs. National writers talked about that. Local Capitals beat writers said that there's no chance that this Capitals team will make it to the playoffs. And Jeff Merrick said today on his show that maybe the Capitals should just consider themselves lucky to make it to the playoffs, that maybe the Capitals making it to the playoffs, period, is their Stanley Cup. So definitely the bar has been set rather low for the Capitals. And the play tonight definitely does not help the case of Capitals fans that are hoping for another victory, a chance of winning a series, because it's going to kind of remind us a lot of the last time the Capitals made it to the playoffs a couple years ago against the Panthers. And if we remember that, that was another quick exit. I know this is game number 2. I know that there's some time for the Capitals to work on things. They don't play another game here until Friday, but they've got to find a way to figure it out. Spencer Carbery, I watched his press conference talking about how quick the Rangers are and that you don't have a lot of time to think about it. That is true. With that being said, what countermeasures are you going to deploy? And how are you going to get past their 1-3-1 defense? It's difficult. What usually ends up happening is that they will turn over the puck, or the Capitals player will be forced to dump it in, but then they have that covered where a guy will skate back and pick up the puck. This team is a well-oiled machine, the Rangers, that is. The Capitals have got to find a way to overcome. They are not the only team to run a 1-3-1. Sometimes it's not a 1-3-1, it's more of a stack. But in any event, the Capitals have got to find a way to pick it up and figure it out. Like I talked about, a 1-3-1 is not the most unique thing in the world. I saw it for Tampa for years when Guy Boucher was the head coach there, that they can find a way to get it done. It's just executing that plan of getting it done. I'm not saying the Capitals are out of it, being that they lost the second game of the series, but it is going to be exceedingly difficult for them to do so if they don't stick to the script that Spencer Carbery and his assistants have laid out. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about that the Capitals have struggled in the playoffs already, but it's not all doom and gloom, and that players like Tom Wilson are trying to lead the charge. I'll discuss coming up. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for a winning championship, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. Now, if there's one thing that I know, sometimes you're watching a Caps game, sometimes you're watching a Nationals game, and maybe you're not that into it, but I have the solution. Open the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, the game is that much more exciting. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day, I am still enthusiastic about the Capitals. Yes, coming off the second loss of this playoff series, I'm still excited. And why am I? Because they've done the improbable. Kind of liked what Jeff Merrick said, the Capitals making it to the playoffs period is something that has defied everyone's expectations of this team. But they're in it. And now anything is ultimately possible. They're in a hole. They have to find a way to dig themselves out. And sometimes it takes one player in particular to say, hey, guys, I'm throwing you down the rope and I'm going to try to pull you up. Tom Wilson was that guy for the Capitals tonight against the Rangers. Ultimately, it wasn't enough, but he did what he could do. I think to a certain extent, maybe he saw that Alex Ovechkin was struggling. I think that the perception that he is going to be the next captain of the Capitals is kind of a well-known thing. I would actually be quite surprised if that doesn't happen. And he was ultimately the guy to try to lead the Capitals to victory lane. And one of the things that's been difficult for Tom Wilson is the fighting aspect. I did see the talking back and forth with Dylan McElrath and Rempe. I also saw the chatter when the Capitals were frustrated between Tom Wilson and Rempe as well. To avoid what comes natural for him is fighting, to be that physical guy. But again, one of the things that I talked about that could have been an absolute game changer is that if Tom Wilson or Dylan McElrath would have dropped the mitts and helped, swing the momentum. Think about what happens when the head coach does a goalie change. They're just trying to change momentum. I think that Tom Wilson has got to do that. And if, the detractors of saying why that's not a good idea is that you'll be spending more time in the penalty box. Listen, the Capitals spent enough time in the penalty box and they had nothing to show for it. If Tom Wilson could just lay Rempe out, or another one of the players, Kreider, one of those guys out there that wants to be a tough guy, and take a pound of flesh from the Rangers, well, that's at least partial victory for me and could ultimately be what happens to drag the Rangers down in the mud. And that is what the Capitals will have to resort to. And Tom Wilson, he didn't do that tonight. He did it by scoring goals and helping lead the charge for the Capitals to at least try to steer the ship in the right direction. Tom Wilson scores on the power play, and it made it a 4-3 game. A huge thing for Wilson, has recorded his 8th career postseason multi-point game and his first since May 15th, 2021 versus Boston. And he is ultimately proving that he is not that junkyard dog, that ultimately that is who Rempe is. I know that he did score a goal the other night, but if you want to take a look at the back of his hockey card in total from this last year, he had like 1 goal with the Rangers and not much better with the Wolfpack. So that is what Tom Wilson is doing. And again, like I say, he tried to resist the urge of fighting. And he did that because he understands that he is better served being a goal scorer. And I think it is kind of an instinctual thing for him, an intrinsic thing that he is that tough guy that he's had to fight off. But he wasn't done there. Tom Wilson earned the primary assist on Strome's power play goal, his 2nd assist of the series. Wilson now has recorded a point in his last 3 Stanley Cup playoff dating back to May 3rd, 2022 at Florida. So Tom Wilson is a guy that you want to have with you in the trenches. He is the guy that is going to be the leader, that is going to step above and beyond to try to help this team win. And we need players like that. I saw that in Dylan Strome, that in TJ Oshie, he struggled. He was getting into it with Artemi Panarin even before the shove. That these players, these veterans, are trying to lead the way. And then it's refreshing as well to see the young guys stepping up. Connor McMichael and Henrik Slapierre playing a huge role for the Capitals that, while this team is taking steps in the right direction, more needs to be done. And a lot more of that can be done. And the leadership of Tom Wilson is huge for this team. Wilson leads Washington in scoring this series with 3 points. The Caps tried to stage a comeback late in the game and pulled the goalie, but ultimately it was too little too late. So the heroics of Tom Wilson were a bit in vain, not totally. I'm glad that the score was 4-3 and not 4-0 or 4-1. And I understand at the end of the day, it's all about who wins and loses, but it's the little things for now. Is that, can they make it close, and can they build in a direction that, in the next game, they can do something crazy and actually pick up the win. The Caps showed improvement as they got more shots on net, but in order to beat Shesterkin, the big thing here is they'll need to get more traffic up front. And also the Capitals struggled on power play entries. So despite the fact of what Wilson did, they've got to find a way to beat Shesterkin. And one of the things that's well known is crash the net and good things will happen. Screen the goalie and good things will happen. It's not going to be an easy thing, as Peter Laviolette has the Rangers dialed in really well, is they're going to have to get up in Shesterkin's grill. They're going to have to find a way to screen him to give the Capitals the best chance at winning games. They're going to have a big guy posted up front, a Protus, a bigger guy that is not going to be easily driven away. Because oftentimes there's a lot of shoving and that kind of thing that goes on. You need a big guy that can stand kind of post up in front of the netminder and serve as a screen. They're going to have to get creative to beat Shesterkin. And that is ultimately what they're going to have to do in order to get it done. But just taking a look at it, the Capitals did show improvement, but entries on the power play are some of the things that came into focus. So to wrap it up here, Tom Wilson was huge for the Capitals, but his heroics were not enough as they did not find a way to beat Shesterkin enough to pick up the win. And also their struggles on the power play. The power play entries were tough for this team. The keys for success is to avoid spending too much time in the penalty box. We saw what happened in the game tonight when the Capitals and some of their key players were in the penalty box. Same goes for the Rangers. They paid as well. So the Capitals have got to find a way to clean it up, and hopefully Tom Wilson can continue to lead the charge, and hopefully Alex Ovechkin finds his game so I can talk to you guys next time about a Capitals victory. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about the Artemi Panarin hit on TJ Oshie, and there was no penalty. Can you believe it? And who did get penalized out of it? It was a Capitals player. It wasn't even a Rangers player. What am I talking about? I'll discuss coming up. We're in the playoffs, and regardless of where the other teams are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Now, let me tell you guys something. I'm not the kind of guy that was that into fantasy sports until I found Sleeper. And now let me tell you something. I love it. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Capitals fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building a talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talents fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. So if you are someone that is in the business of hiring, whether it's HR or whatever the case is, you need Indeed. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why you need Indeed. You only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. One more time, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. You need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it was a physical match out there. There weren't any moments where, the spotlight was drawn to center stage and there was 2 guys really duking it out, but there was the hit where TJ Oshie was coming and Artemi Panarin kind of came up from behind and pushed back on him, and it looked to me like it hit TJ Oshie in the face. It seemed kind of clear-cut for me. And I don't want to be the guy that is looking at these things with Capitals colored glasses on, but it did seem quite apparent that that was a bad hit. And what happened? Well, there was no penalty, nothing. In fact, Connor McMichael, the guy that stood up for TJ Oshie, was the guy that was penalized. If you guys aren't aware, the refs, the officials, and all of major sports are coming under scrutiny like never before. And why is that? Because there's more footage, there's more cell phones, that's been around for years, but there's more people using said phones in those situations. And you're seeing the weakness in officiating. And it was apparent. They reviewed it and it was seen as a clean hit. That to me seems false. And ultimately, I think it was Artemi Panarin and I think it was TJ Oshie going back and forth all night. And Artemi Panarin was seeking a pound of flesh. My thing on it is there needs to be some sort of retribution, which I think there will be. To Artemi Panarin. We remember what happened the last time, or one of the last times the Capitals played the Rangers, when Artemi Panarin jumped on Tom Wilson's back, the playoffs I'm talking about, and he threw him to the ground. Let not forget that, Artemi Panarin. Before you think you're a tough guy, before you start jumping on someone's back, mess around and find out. Mess around and find out, tough guy. Why don't you try stepping up to Dylan McElrath? Why don't you try stepping up to Tom Wilson? Drop the mitts, tough guy. See what happens. And that is apparent. So he picked on someone that he perceived that would take it and wouldn't retaliate. And probably not, because he looked disoriented and maybe was borderline concussed from the whole situation. TJ Oshie went down after being hit in the head by Artemi Panarin, who backed into him to deliver a check. Officials said that the point of contact for Panarin was Oshie's chest. It seemed to me that Panarin kind of left off his skates a little bit. I don't buy what they're seeing, and it, again, draws into focus again officiating and how it stands to have improvement. And I understand that the Connor McMichael thing was a bit retaliatory, but with that said, based on just what happened, it seems ridiculous, and it seems like that there is no continuity or consistency in officiating. McMichael received a roughing minor for sticking up for TJ Oshie after going after Panarin after the hit. They said it wasn't a minor penalty, they said it wasn't a minor penalty. That was the explanation I got. I asked a follow-up question with regards to leaving his feet point of contact. And the one thing that's tricky is the spotter removes him, Carbery said. So a difficult thing. And I think it's one of the things that they'll look back on and say, hey, maybe we blew that call. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the Yankees game as well, just the most recent botched call as well, is that he thought the manager of the Yankees was chirping him, and the umpire threw the manager of the Yankees out of the game when it turns out it was a guy in the stands. Sometimes the officials need to understand that they blew it. Maybe they made a mistake. And I think that is the case in the game tonight. I think they blew that call. When I was watching that game, not only did I think that would have been a major penalty, but I thought that would have been something that would have been reviewed by the players, the NHL's player safety. And none of that is going to be the case, as he got away unscathed. And, is there a chance that they can make this right somehow, some way? I don't think so. But oftentimes, you take a look at Tom Wilson and some of the things that he's done. Well, all of a sudden he's got to face the NHL's player safety, and they're going to make a decision on what they're going to do with him. I think that this is something that they should kind of campaign for, and that I think that Panarin should ultimately get suspended for a couple games because of that. I ultimately do. I think it was a bad hit, and I think that he was targeting his head. But that's what we're coming to, and there's a long history between the Capitals and the Rangers about a physicality there. But think about how they throw the book at Tom Wilson on a regular basis, and Artemi Panarin skates away scot-free. Those are the things that need to change, and something that can change the outcome of this series of games here. So, because say TJ Oshie needed to miss a substantial amount of time, say 2 or 3 games, that could be all she wrote for the Capitals, and they would be out of the playoffs. So these things need to be addressed while they can. All right, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. I also host a weekly show called the Capitals Minutecast. Check it out. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.